Hello, and welcome to Tavern Talk. Today's section is DMing on the Rocks, where we talk Dungeon Master survival checks, charisma saves, and dropping the T-bomb on your players.
I'm Trevor Lancaster.
And I'm Timothy Gibbons.
The T-bomb, of course, referring to Tiamat.
Exactly. And we are currently still in Silver Steed in the lovely dwarven town of Braska.
Oh, such a fiery hot place with lots of dwarvish company.
Exactly. And where, if you happen to be a rather swarthy adventurer, you might just gain admittance to see Braska himself, but only if you're interested in saving his daughter from a demon possession.
I mean, I wouldn't hold your breath. It doesn't happen that often.
Not often, but when it does, quite thrilling.
When it does, get ready for a year-long campaign.
Exactly. So, what we're talking about is we're kind of continuing our train of thought from the Pint for the Players, NPC shakedowns and shake-ups, only now we're going to try to tackle it a little bit more from the Dungeon Master's perspective as to how, as a Dungeon Master, you adapt to your players interacting with the world and how you, in a sense, evolve your storylines to adjust to the changes that their characters have made just with their interactions with NPCs.
Oh, yeah. No, there's been complete storylines built around just things that the players have done in the world.
Yes. It is so easy to have a completely set campaign and then have your players discover a little bit of lore that you had just kind of thrown in there, not really thinking much of it, and suddenly it becomes the focal point of the campaign.
It is true. Man. And sometimes a player failure can lead to an entire open campaign.
Oh, those are sometimes the most interesting.
Oh, they are. Sometimes it'll take you to hell and back, but sometimes it's worth it.
And sometimes you shoot the android and lose all that exposition that would have helped keep you alive.
Oh, there's so many things I don't know now.
So many things. Well, we'll let you start. We'll start off with one of yours.
Okay.
And then since IRL players, I started off, we'll let you start off with one of yours, and then I'll come in with one of mine.
Okay. Which one of mine?
I know, you have so many. You don't have to rub it in. Just choose one and roll with it.
I literally don't know which one to choose. I'm sorry.
Okay,
one you can relate to or one you can't?
How about a happy medium?
Happy medium? Were you there during the war campaign? I feel like you were.
Briefly. I think my work schedule was a little off, so I remember I put together a character. He was a level 3 rogue
Kinku.
thief.
Yeah. No?
No, this was not my Kinku.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no. My Kinku was part of the early part, and then I later developed another character for it.
Ah, all right.
Because my Kinku ended up going into Kinney's world and becoming the captain of an airship.
Oh, yeah, that poor Kinku.
No, he fulfilled his lifelong dream of not having wings, but of being able to fly.
Being able to fly. That is a long life dream of all Kinkus everywhere.
That is.
And being able to speak on their own.
He is not so much. His intelligence was kind of low. Wisdom was good. He was a monk.
Oh, yeah.
So, monk of the elements, so that he could learn how to fly that way, because his intelligence was just not good enough to learn arcane lore to become a wizard. Starts off in the war campaign. Ends up somehow getting teleported over to Kinney's world, where he is mistaken as the diplomat of the Kinku Nation, gets himself on board a sky ship that goes to take on another sky ship that's being run by a beholder. Oh, that was beautiful. Okay, I'll tell this one really quick. So we pull up in the sky ship. We see the Beholder sky ship going after this rare treasure that's buried in the base of this tower that's heavily warded. He's currently firing one of his eye beams through this modified telescope that enhances the beam, trying to burst through these wards. We pull up alongside, deliver a withering broadside with our ballistas before my Kinku and Tristan's rogue jump over to the other ship with a small contingent of the guard and attempt to take down this Beholder and his minions. We were so overmatched. After 3 rounds of combat, we suddenly realized most of the guard is dead. The captain has been hit and obliterated by the Beholder's disintegration ray. I myself got taken out by one of the rays, but fortunately, Tristan's rogue was able to revive me. Our sky ship swings around to the side, and we realize that we're going to beat a hasty retreat. As we do, given the Kinku's ability to mimic, I look over at Kenny and I'm like, okay, I am just going to have my Kinku try to... He doesn't understand deep speech, which is what the Beholder's been using, but he is just going to throw out all the words he can and hopefully try to issue an order that will confuse the Beholder's minions. I roll a natural 20 to do so. Kenny gets this look on his face, as I have just ordered the minions to retrieve the bomb from the hold that they were going to use as the last breaching method into the tower. As the bomb is brought up on deck, I on my airship still within throwing distance, I ask Kenny, can I see the bomb? He says, you can see the bomb. Is it in range of a vial of alchemist fire? It is in range of a vial of alchemist fire. I roll to throw the alchemist fire on top of the fuse. I roll a 19 plus my modifier. It hits, blowing the Beholder ship to smithereens, splattering us with some damage, but not enough to take us down, blowing the Beholder ship to smithereens. We get back to port, and with the captain dead and half the crew gone, well, as we're flying back, one of the highest surviving member of the crew is suddenly a little bit at a loss as to what to do without his captain. My Kinku, seizing upon the opportunity, stands behind the wheel and rolls an 18 for his charisma check in order to convince it was either an 18 or a 17, one of those two, but it was high enough to do it.
Right.
Gets behind there and convinces the crew that he has the stuff to take it as the new captain, and then promptly promotes Tristan's rogue to matey first.
I remember hearing about this. I wasn't actually in that campaign.
It was a beautiful one-night session.
But, oh man, it sounded great. It really did.
It was beautiful. And every now and again, okay, this is a little bit off topic, of course, but sometimes those natural 20s are so beautiful.
Oh, when a natural 20 lands and you're not fully expecting it to work.
I was honestly, all I was trying to do was just buy us a few seconds to get off that ship. Right. And I was hoping to just roll high enough that I could confuse the minions, give us that opening we needed to get off that ship. I roll. Oh, and I saw that 20 and I'm like, the heavens opened up and my Kinku is bathed in holy light.
But you probably didn't realize that you just shot the android.
We will tackle the android at the closing of this session, because I'm sure many of you are wondering, what android and what D&D campaign is this?
What are you talking about, and why is there an android? Yeah, no, I can see that. So, one of the many times that the players have affected the world, and something as a part of how I DM, is any time that the players do something in the world that would affect it in a way that would change something, I let it change. And there's a lot of times where, for the better and for the worse, the world has been changed. From monarchs being called out or slandered throughout the town to
weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction. Oh. So, I was playing a one-off campaign with a smaller group, and they had decided they wanted to run a higher level game. So they wanted to run a level 16 game. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. You guys make up some level 16 characters, and I'll run you through just like a one-off, one-night level 16, so you can feel the power of it. Well, they were halfway getting started, and I had set up this entire encounter in the under part of the city, where it revealed a large tomb that went on to this cavernous opening, revealing this pyramid set upon this mountain of sand, just hibernating beneath the city. and I'd already laid it all out and was ready for the one night. Well, the players started roaming through the town. They're like, okay, well, we need to buy a few things with all the extra gold and things. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, we could say you just bought them. And they're like, no. We want to shop for these. And I was like, oh, okay, very well. So they ended up going from shop to shop to shop to shop, picking up, extra potions here, small bits of food there, a chain over there. And then one of their characters, who was this life domain cleric, and another one who was a grave domain cleric. They were life and death in as a team working together.
That sounds like a lethal combination.
It was just absolutely destructive. But the life domain cleric wanders into this tinkerer's shop. And this tinkerer's sitting there and kind of skittish behind the counter and looks up. Oh, hello, sir. Can I help you? You're looking for something? He looks him dead in the eye and goes, where are your weapons of mass destruction? And I'm
Did he cast Zone of Truth on him?
Oh, yeah, no. It like busts in. That's right. After he asks for the weapons of mass destruction, casts Zone of Truth in the area. And so the tinkerer is getting really skittish, and I'm like, this tinkerer probably has some sort of weapon of mass destruction that he doesn't want anybody to know about.
Most tinkerers do.
And so he tries to avoid the question as much as possible. It's like, you'll never find out. I won't let you see it. Covers his mouth and gasps at him. As he's like, oh, really? See, earlier, which I probably should have mentioned, they had gone to an enchanter and got these small stones of message that they hooked onto their shoulders like a police radio and could send messages in between the group. So he reaches over, he's like, we have some sort of terrorist here. And he's like, what organization are you working for? Now just leave my shop. I don't have anything to do with you. And he starts reaching under the table for something. I didn't realize it was going to escalate so far. And with them being a higher level game, I was like, you know what? We're going to make this the game. So, after they push their attack on him, he pulls the lever under his table, dropping down into this secret underground workshop where he's been cobbling together and working with tinkerers from all over the city to build this large mechanical iron, actually it was based on a shield golem.
But had the stats essentially of a Clockwork Jaeger.
Yeah, no, it definitely had the stats of a Clockwork Jaeger. But they chased him down into this shop, and he was barely able to scramble in, a few points of health remaining before he buckled himself into this machine that he then activated, and it started this epic battle between all of the players and this giant Gundam of a Tinkerer's mass destruction. Inside, it had it was standing at about 80 feet tall, broad metal behemoth with this tube off on one side that had these strange pointed cylinders that would load into it. Of course, they were filled with oil, alchemist fire, and this new invention known as black powder, and a very odd mixture to cause a rather large, fiery explosion.
Everything a tinkerer should have.
Everything a tinkerer should have, yeah. No. The players pushed him into combat and slowly wore him down. As he turned the barrel, not wanting to use this so early, he began to lay out a volley of attacks. One of the players was holding his action in order to make a firebolt attack against him. as he turned and got ready to fire, he's like, he's about to attack. I'm going to use my firebolt attack now. And fires his firebolt straight down the barrel of this mech, igniting the payload inside this barrel and setting off all the other charges, covering this area in a 500-foot ring of oily fire and just incinerating the town. So I ended up having to roll dice. One of the characters, amongst their picking up of objects, got a ring of fire resistance, which he was wearing at the time. When the entire thing went off, it was just enough damage that if he halved it, he would have 4 points of health remaining. So, with 4 points of health remaining, the life domain cleric brings everyone back in with this massive healing word.
Life domain, man.
Life domain. You can't keep a man down when there's a life domain in town.
Always have one in your party.
But, oh man. Everybody was back into the fight. All of his attacks were completely set aside. The town was set ablaze. And all the way through, while they're making their attacks, I'm returning and getting through this battle. I'm docking down health for the machine and to the mechanical failure points, and I'm thinking, why did he build this machine? And throughout the battle, in the background, just started jotting down small reasons and cobbled together that in this world, every 300 years, a Tarrasque rises from the ocean and sets waste to the nearby city. So, they ended up finally destroying this machine. The gnome inside grabbing this release lever and jettisoning his seat out into the city that was still lit ablaze. He wasn't able to make it far from his seat before he was burned to death. The party, victorious, sat down in this middle area where they were able to put out the flames, took a long rest, and then journeyed out amongst the burnt and wasted city to see flames still going on the horizon, as the city was, as previously stated when the party got there, attached to this small forest that is now this raging wildfire working its way to this elven domain and up to this stony outcropping fortress, where they are currently fighting to deal with this fire that is threatening their lands. They come across the corpse of the Tinkerer. One of the life domain cleric, or the life domain cleric, blah, 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 walked over, brought him back to talk with Dead. It was like, hey man, I'm really sorry. I think we went a little too far.
Just a little.
Just a little. And then the Tinkerer's like, hey, I might have overreacted a little. So I think we're both to blame on this. He's like, yeah. And he's like, any other questions you have? Like, yeah, what was the mech for? Well, every 200 years when the Tarrasque raises and lays waste to the towns before going back to sleep at the bottom of the ocean. We had designed it to fight him. I think you guys might be our only saving grace. Good luck.
Well, not a saving grace for the town, but maybe for what's left.
Yeah, no, they definitely killed more than the Tarrasque did. So that one shot that they finished up led into this whole world being created, where everybody still talks about this one island that is destroyed by a Tarrasque out in the middle of the sea somewhere, in some place.
Mm-hmm. You're I tell you, characters come up with these craziest ideas. At one point, it's terrifying because you see your whole world obliterating, but at the same time, you're like, okay, you know what? They're in character. They're just throwing something random out that you never saw before, and
Oh yeah.
you just have to roll with it. I've got a couple of examples in. So this world is actually the first world I created. I think I mentioned it in an earlier podcast, but Radius, basically a sundered world. It's
Yes.
material plane, Feywild, Shadowfell, and ethereal plane, and nothing else beyond.
Ah, yes.
So it basically, and the story arc I created around it is this is a world that basically, because of the magics that went into it and its formation, it draws random wild energy from all these other universes, so you get all these crazy things, including a couple of spaceships, which led to some interesting encounters. I had this one character right off the start, right as they're going off their first bounty. They get to this small fort town that's having to deal with these, cannibalistic, almost flesh golem construct halflings.
Oh man, those things were interesting to kill, mainly because of that powder they released after their
The
death.
powder they released, also the scientific components of their blood. There's actually a whole arc behind it. One of the characters they get introduced to is this young halfling elf ranger. And I'd been playing with a story arc for her in my mind. And I introduced her, basically, she was the scout of the party, although I gave her the statistics of an archer. And she basically helps them overcome the forgelings, and then when, of course, the characters decide to use magic, well, the guardsmen at the time, they're in an area where magic is forbidden outside of certain enclaves. The guards try to take they try to take Goldenbeard, the cleric dwarf, into custody. That went south for them very quickly, and she helped with that as well.
Oh yeah.
So they managed to make it back, managed to charisma check their way through the town official and let them know, oh, yeah, no, the poor guard you sent with us, they just bought it.
Yeah, they couldn't handle that intense, monstrous attack that we were under. Of course, we had the heads from them to bring back as, as proof that there was a lot of
You
them.
had good charisma rolls on that.
Oh yeah.
And
especially with my charisma on that character.
that was crazy. So, I then decide that I give them another quest. It's for further south of the encampment. It's a missing carnival that they have to go investigate. So Trevor, who's playing one of the characters, he decides, we might need some extra firepower. They managed to strike up a conversation with this half-elf whose name was Kestra. And I just kind of had an idea behind her, but the interactions between them were so good that I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to kind of expound upon this. So I had given her, as just kind of, I thought it would be a fun idea, she had a friend who was a giant phase spider, who was also a level 20 necromancer wizard.
Which also appeared in our battle when we were almost dead.
Right. Sometimes I realized really quick, oh man, I was still fairly new at this, and I realized I kind of threw them into a situation where they were a little overpowered. And I'm like, okay, maybe I went a little overboard, but I just loved the idea of a giant phase spider. And it worked because Kestra, in addition to being a half-elf archer, was also a were spider. So it worked with her story arc. Well, they get back to town. I send them out on the mission for the caravan. Trevor's character, Hojo, decides that they need a little more firepower. He goes and invites Kestra.
Well, we also didn't know the lay of the land, and having somebody else with us would probably be very beneficial to us finding where we actually need to go.
This kind of threw me for a bit of a loop because I was like, okay, I've introduced her, I've introduced Anasi the phase spider, and I was thinking, okay, when they come back, maybe like when they're level 5 or level 6, maybe we can pick up a story arc with them. Hojo asking her to accompany them, I'm thinking about a character, I'm thinking, okay, Anasi is kind of overprotective mother hen spider and doesn't want the young spiderling to leave the nest. She, however, has a slight rebellious streak to her, and I start off with her giving the excuse, well, Anasi doesn't want me to leave, and suddenly realize, no, she's going to go because that is fitting with her character. And she says, so that's why I'm going to go with you. And it started a whole story arc where Kestra became an integral part of the party.
Yeah. And an integral part of a future campaign, which we have now gone into some sort of weird demigod's head to fix his daddy issues. I'm not sure, but he's broken inside, and we've got to put him back together.
Oh, Pyramus the Mad Satyr. No, daddy issues. No, he doesn't have daddy issues. It's more a betrayed messiah complex.
You know, I had thought that might be a thing, but
Yes, so essentially now they are in the Feywild, having to track down. Basically, this character, and this I'm not afraid to share this because you guys already know this part. The character Pyramus the Mad Satyr is basically, they're not sure how, but he has been split into three separate entities. One that's trapped on the material plane, one that's trapped in the Feywild, and one that's trapped in the Shadowfell. They, as part of their mission, have discovered, if we capture all three essences in these essentially soul shard crystals, we can unite them together. And so they have agreed to go down and capture the soul shard in the Feywild. And in this world, I created that the Feywild is ruled by a group known as the Amber Fathers. They're basically ancient Fey creatures. And earlier, you guys were facing a cult, the Bonesmen, which you guys will run into again. But
those poor cultists.
Yes, I thought I'd designed some very nasty characters. Your crew carved through them like a hot knife through butter.
It was bad. Poor Ushk, though.
Yes, Ush, the heart-sucking demon who was accompanying you.
Oh, man. He definitely got the brunt of it.
He did. Oucheth. But anyway, just a quick backstory. They ended up facing this one bad guy. He had this sword. There was a soul-devouring sword. So everyone he killed with the sword, their soul gets sucked in where it gets torn apart by a bone claw unless they can fight their way through. Because essentially the sword was fashioned from the blood of the Master Demon Lord, Adone, and the essence of a lich. So the lich's phylactery is inside the sword. The only way to destroy the bone claw is to destroy the phylactery inside of it. As they're going the way through, Kestra had gotten killed by the sword and sucked into it. Hojo had gotten killed by the sword, sucked into it. Tristan's gnome, that poor gnome. We will have to discuss that poor gnome because some of the things that we developed with his character were gold. But we'll save that for another one. And a few others had gotten caught in. I had also, as part of the lore, thrown that this sword had once killed a solar. So they find the remnants of a solar soul, or soul shard as they're called in this campaign. Kestra, because of her lore, I really hadn't intended for... Actually, I had intended for Kestra to get into that sword, but the way the lore worked, it just... Basically, at Hojo's request, Kestra interacted with the soul shard, and it absorbed into her. She manages to get them down, break the phylactery, releases everyone, but she herself stays trapped in the sword. They have to get the sword to the Amber Fathers. The Amber Fathers say, you go down and take care of this Mad Satyr. We will try to get her soul out. This is so not at all what I had planned for her backstory.
Oh, I know it. But after the slight time of adventuring with her, Hojo developed this almost father complex over her.
And it was enhanced by the fact that Anasi basically placed her under your control.
Oh, yeah, no.
Hinting at that it was her time to depart, to learn the skills she needed for what was coming.
As fascinated as Hojo was to be torn apart for 100 years by Anasi...
No, it was to have his blood drained for 100 years.
Oh, yeah, have his blood drained for 100 years and find the effects on it. He decided that it's probably not the right time for such a long experiment.
No, probably not. So, where we left the campaign, because everybody had to go back to college and school, was... Alright, so we left it in the middle of hunting down Pyramus, and then they're going to, after they get done with that, if they survive, what am I talking about? Of course you guys are going to survive.
What? Survive? Us? I mean, Pyramus might have a little bit of trauma afterwards, but, I mean...
Considering how mad he is, not like angry mad, but like just mad?
Right.
Yes. Oh... But that will probably be for a later reveal after you guys have finished that campaign.
Yes.
So, I think that wraps it up for today. I am Timothy Gibbons.
And I am Trevor Lancaster.
So, if you liked our podcast and have any questions, comments, or critiques that you would like to send us, please cast your sending spells to gmtaverntalk@gmail.com, or you can cast your message cantrips into the reply section below.
And remember, don't be afraid to let your characters change your world slightly and in interesting ways.
Because sometimes they will just rock your world.
Or they will drop a giant rock on your world. Either way, makes for a good story arc, a fun time, and the only way to lose at Dungeons & Dragons is to have a boring campaign.
Absolutely.